Not yet. Here we go.
We're
All
live.
right, let's try it.
We're ready to go.
Without the technical director.
Just a couple of guys with no skills trying to get it done.
But we got the music and we got Philadelphia Porch. What else do we do?
We do.
Well. Here we
are here.
Here we are without the technical director.
We are. Have we launched it to all of our places? Okay, now I see some people showing up. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
I believe we're launched live, ready to go on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're on Twitter, even though
X.
Twitter doesn't exist anymore.
Right. X. X. We're everywhere. And if you want to catch us live, you come right here where we are. Actually, what I was trying to say, but something else came out of my head, is if you want to catch us on the web, you can catch us on theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com, theporcheslive.com. Click on the Philadelphia tab. It's the only tab that matters, at least to some.
Well, I think Chris picked a good week to take off. What do you think, Mark? Yeah,
he did take a good week to take off. Chris is having some fun in the sun, or maybe he's not. Who knows?
Well, I did talk to him earlier, and there were a bunch of cats around, so I have no idea what that means. Maybe he's in some slum somewhere. He's just hanging out with the cats.
Yep. Who knows what's going on in the world of Klein?
But we do know what's going on in the world of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, and it's not good. It's not good, my friends. We experienced an absolute just ass whooping, an absolute beatdown of epic proportions. The Eagles gave up 6 consecutive touchdown drives. The last time that happened was 1957. So I would have been minus 13 years old.
Yikes. That's a long time ago. Well, they did lose big to the 49ers, but what lessons can Eagles fans take from this beatdown, Mark? I think there are a few that I know of, but I'm curious of your opinions.
Well, okay, so by the way, is there still some of that music in the background? I kind of think I hear it. No?
Ooh, maybe it's still playing. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you just have to turn it off.
Nah, I think I'm just gonna let it go the whole time. No, I'll get it. I'll get it.
Yeah, I've got a number of different ideas about what went wrong. Now, first of all, the first quarter, the Eagles dominated play. I think they had 124 offensive yards, and the 49ers started out with 2 3-and-outs, right?
Right.
The problem is you can't score, you can't have field goals against a good team like this.
No.
So, if you score touchdowns there, now they didn't, but if you do and you go up 14-0, it's a completely different game. So they didn't execute in the red zone. That was a big problem. Number one. Big problem number 2 is the tackling was just horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, the yards after the catch was insane. I actually saw a stat this morning that Brock Purdy only threw 1 ball in the air further than 15 yards.
Yeah, I believe that.
So, you basically, well, one thing I do think, if that's the approach they take, then you could you could flip it around maybe if you get to play him another time. And, you could really just jam everybody within 10 yards and say, "Hey, beat us over the top." And, and
Yeah.
we're gonna, just tackle you when you throw your 5-yard pass,
Right.
with multiple guys or at least jump some routes or something like that.
Right.
But really it was poor tackling. The Eagles were playing a special teamer at linebacker because Zach Cunningham was out injured. Also, Nicholas Morrow. I mean, he's already playing for an injured Nakobe Dean.
Right.
So you basically have two linebackers that shouldn't be playing as starters, which is not good.
Right.
Especially when you have a tight end like Kittle and you have like a running back like McCaffrey, who your linebackers have to follow out of the backfield. So that's a real weakness for the Eagles. Now they did sign Shaquille Leonard, formerly Darius Leonard of the Colts. Um, we'll see if that helps or not. I mean, one way of looking at it is he certainly couldn't be any worse than the guys who played yesterday.
Right.
That's one thing. I did see one good stat on him where his stats aren't great overall, but apparently he's rated as the fifth best linebacker against the pass.
Okay.
So he's good in coverage and he's got really long arms that can get in the way of some passes. But he hasn't really quite made the big plays like like he has his first couple years coming off back surgery from last year. So I think the bottom line is you just got to hope that, a tandem of Zach Cunningham and Shaq Leonard, does a better job for you in the middle of the defense. But, that's certainly a concern. And the bottom line is, they did. They got crushed. Chris Klein says they got crushed.
They got crushed.
Brock Purdy, Hall of Fame. I will say this. I mean, you can say that Brock Purdy is a system quarterback, but the bottom line is it doesn't really matter if he's great at the system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Because look, if he doesn't have to throw it more than 15 yards, but he's got Christian McCaffrey and Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Kittle. Well, all he's got to do is be accurate within those 15 yards, and they've got a pretty good shot to win all those matchups. So,
well, the one thing that I thought the 49ers defense did really well against Jalen Hurts was they contained him. They really did a good job of making sure that he was staying in the pocket and didn't have any place to run to make plays. I think that's the mystery of Jalen Hurts. Like, he can extend the play with his legs, he can extend the play down the field with his legs really well. And the 49ers weren't allowing him to do that at all. And I thought that was really smart defensive play. The other thing that I liked about the 49ers is that they just kept at it. I thought actually the Eagles came out defensively perfect. Like, they came out and they stuffed them. They got the crowd into the game, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you wish those field goals were touchdowns. That definitely would have made a difference, I believe. But what the 49ers are really brilliant at doing is not panicking. They just don't panic. They're just like, so what? They stopped us. We're still going to run Christian McCaffrey. And they just kept running him. And it just looked like no matter what, and I get it. I mean, as being a Steelers fan, I know what it's like to have injuries in your linebacking core. So it really makes it difficult to stop a half decent running back, let alone maybe the best back in the league when you have secondary guys in there. And I think that's what the 49ers do well. They never go away from their playbook, which is just keep running it. Just keep running it. And then they eventually wear you down when it comes, into the second and third period of the game. And by that time, if defenses aren't ready to play that smash mouth game for 60 minutes, it's really difficult to stop that kind of system, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I also think too on the flip side, I think the Eagles abandoned the run. I mean, part of it was, yeah, they did get behind, so you have to throw more when you're behind. But I think like DeAndre Swift, I think he only had like 8 carries in the game, something like that.
Yeah, he
You
got
know,
hurt too.
yeah, and you gotta, but you gotta like, you gotta get the running game more involved.
I agree. I don't think the Eagles want to be like the Bills. Like when the Bills were
Mhm,
really good, all they could really do well was throw the ball. And
right.
they could do it really well. And I actually thought the Eagles threw the ball really well, especially Devonta Smith got into the game
Mhm.
big time. And I know AJ Brown was playing a little bit hurt with some ribs, but he still looked pretty good to me. I
Yeah, they
think
both had good games.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think where they're still hurting is a lack of passing game for their tight end. They really are missing Dallas Goedert. They haven't
yeah.
really replaced him yet.
Yeah, that is pretty big. I mean, he's a pretty big part of the offense. And he's kind of like their number one red zone target too.
Yeah,
So, you get down to that part of the field, and even if he's not the target, he draws attention. So it
right.
kind of frees the other guys to be up, open a little more. So, I mean, the bottom line is that it was a bad game, and it certainly is cause for concern. I mean, you can look at it from one of two ways. I mean, you can look at it and you can say, hey, the number one seed is still theirs to lose.
Sure. Yeah.
You can look at it in terms of between the Eagles and the 49ers and the Cowboys and the Lions after this game with Dallas, which will be a very hard game, but after that game, the Eagles certainly have the easiest schedule of the 4 teams.
Hmm.
They'll have Seattle, which
Giants
is
twice.
Giants twice and the Cardinals.
Yeah.
So, um,
Watch out for
so
those Cardinals.
yeah, I know, but I mean, look, and then Dallas has to play at Buffalo and at Miami.
Yeah.
Even San Francisco has to play the Ravens. You know, so who knows? I mean, part of the whole thing of getting the number one seed is that hopefully, you don't have to play somebody. So like, what you hope in terms of getting that number one seed is that Dallas and San Francisco end up playing each other. And maybe Dallas beats San Francisco and you get
Right.
Dallas instead, and they're a better matchup for you.
Yeah.
You know what I
Maybe.
mean?
I
Maybe. But I think if you play them again, I think the bottom line is you just have a bet. You have to be better prepared. I think from a coaching standpoint as well. I mean,
yeah.
there really were no adjustments made in the game at all. Um, they just got completely outplayed. And I mean, look, on one hand, you can sit there and you can say, okay, last time the 49ers won the Super Bowl, Eagles beat them in the regular season 40-8. And then the 49ers went on to win the Super Bowl. There's another one I read today. Back when the Steelers won their Super Bowl against the Cardinals,
Yeah.
it was the Eagles versus the Cardinals in the championship game.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah. And that year, the Eagles had beaten the Arizona Cardinals in the regular season 48-20. And they lost 32-25 in the NFC championship game.
I forgot
So
about that. Yeah, that's
so
true.
I mean, this kind of thing does happen,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, I don't really. You can't make the argument that the Eagles are a better football team than them right now, and because of that, um, you know, eh, I think you're more dependent as an Eagles fan. You're more depending now on different things to happen to help you out. Like you're depending on, maybe you don't get to play the 49ers again because they lose and get upset by somebody, or
Yeah.
you're counting on Christian McCaffrey, tears his ACL, and so he's out, and it's a totally different team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, so to that
yeah.
point, I mean,
Yeah.
you were saying that the Eagles weren't very good at tackling yesterday. What is Deebo Samuel made out of that guys just can't tackle him? He's like he's like the most unbelievable wide receiver that I've seen that doesn't look big, but clearly he's big. But when guys hit him, they just bounce off of him sometimes. Like it takes like 2 or 3 people to tackle him. What is that? What is about Deebo Samuel that is so difficult to tackle? He doesn't look that fast.
Well, I think that to me, it's not necessarily like he's not big, and like I don't think he's like 6'5" or anything, but he's really thick. I mean, he's kind of like a linebacker playing wide receiver.
Right. And
You know what I mean?
He's still fast enough to play the wide
Right.
receiver position, right?
Right. I mean, like, there was that one play where, I mean, it's a 5-yard pass to him, and Morrow just gets run over by him. I mean, like, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, just tackle him. Just, I mean, it's unbelievable, really, how good that guy is. So, look, I mean, bottom line, I mean, I've heard some people say, maybe the gauntlet finally got the best of the Eagles. They had all those hard games in a row, and coming off a overtime game of which they played like a zillion snaps,
Right.
and then, of course, the 49ers had 10 days rest because they played on a Thursday.
Right.
But I still think none of that really matters. I mean, the bottom line is you can't use as an excuse that, like, well, you're finally tired and exhausted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't look tired and exhausted in the first quarter.
No, they didn't. They absolutely did not. There was one play that I have to pick your brain about.
Yeah.
The Greenlaw play where Greenlaw slams down the guy.
Yeah.
Who is this big guy that
Big
buys
Dom?
Sirianni? Give me the history of him, because
Okay.
I don't know it well enough, but I know as Eagles fans you do, and I think it would be really interesting to go through this guy.
Yeah, so Big Dom, as they call him, okay? He's the head of security for the Eagles, and he's kind of like all things security. So, like, for example, when it's like the draft, right? Or if it's like you're dealing with like a player acquisition.
Yeah.
When you have to have somebody, like a player vetted, right? He does all that. Like, he digs into the police reports and tries to talk to family members and see what the guy's really made out of. He like does all that stuff, right? And then I guess apparently, to be honest, I didn't even know this, but apparently he also I guess is on the sidelines of every game, and just on the off chance that like something crazy happens, I guess he's just supposed to try to like stand in front of Sirianni. So,
well,
so
something crazy started to happen.
Right. So, I mean, I know, like, you'll notice, like, whenever a player visits the Eagles, they're greeted at the airport by Big Dom, and Big Dom walks with them. But apparently he's like a really cool dude, and everybody loves him.
Yeah, clearly.
There were a lot of people, like, when they were walking into the tunnel, like, after the game, he always like shakes everybody's hand, high fives them, and everybody was like giving him a hug and laugh, and they were like, "You're crazy, man," But the thing that was nuts was, I mean, I think all he was really doing, I think when I tried to read his lips, I think he just said to like Greenlaw, like, "That's fucking bullshit," or something like that. And then Greenlaw tried to like hit him. He barely touched him, but he tried to.
Yeah.
And so then Greenlaw got thrown out, and then I guess they figured they had to throw out Big Dom because you could make the argument that he was, inciting him in some way.
Well, I mean, I was curious about this because this is what I do. I just like to look for things because I didn't know what the actual rule was in the NFL rule book on non-players.
Right.
Because, players get into it all the time on the field,
Right.
even if you're on the sidelines and somebody comes over, players get into it with other players. But I think that's the first time I ever saw a non-player and a player like go eye to eye like that, except for I think Joey Porter did it, right? When he was, but he was a coach,
Right,
like
right.
that's even different, right, than just a non-player. And as it turns out, each team can get like 20 to 25 special passes where non-players can be on the sidelines, but the NFL actually has to like approve of these players being on the sidelines. And I think Sirianni was apologizing because they didn't want the NFL to revoke Dom's privileges on the sideline. So he was like, hey, this was just a one-time thing. Like, this isn't going to continue to happen. And I think he got caught up in the emotion of it all. But I think it was a good thing that he wasn't on the field, because I think if he was on the field, I think that would have been a bigger problem for the Eagles, and it could have been a little bit of a headache they wouldn't want to deal with. I think because where it happened, and let's face it, Greenlaw's a bit of an asshole. So, and a bit of a hothead, as it turns out, too.
Apparently, he's been ejected like a couple times, and he's got like a whole bunch of personal fouls and all that kind of stuff.
Rob said, "In Dom we trust," and now he's wondering if Dom can play some linebacker. Actually, might be a good idea there, Rob. I think he's on to something there. I don't even think he would need to wear pads or anything. He looked big enough, like he could just go out there as is. He looked like a big man who could take care of his own business. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting play, just because the 49ers play so physical, and then clearly that was over the line what he did by slamming. I think it was Devonta Smith.
It was. Yeah,
and he's on my fantasy team, so I'm happy that he stuck up for him too, because it just was unnecessary. But I think that's the thing about the 49ers that I'm most fearful of if I had to play against them in the playoffs, is their physicality. I think they're a very physical team, and they're like that for the whole game. They don't really slow down.
Oh yeah, I mean they hit DeAndre Swift 3 times, I think. And they were all legal hits too, but they did pop him big time.
Yeah, that last one where he hit him right on the chest and just stopped him right in his tracks. That was a pretty vicious hit for sure. Yeah,
it was. I mean, honestly, you don't really see much of that these days anymore, because players are really trying to avoid that because they seem to get penalized all the time.
Right.
But if it's a legal hit, and they were, what can you say? It's a very tough physical team, and that's something that is a little different for the Eagles, because with how good the Eagles' offensive and defensive lines are, they're used to being the team that out physicals the other team.
Right. I mean, clearly with the brotherly shove, I mean, they bowl people over every time they do it by like 3 or 4 yards. So yeah, the physical nature is difficult to take when it's hitting you like that. Hey, I have one more question before we get on to some analysis about the Dallas game.
Okay.
As I'm watching the game and I'm watching Jalen Hurts play, does it bother you that he doesn't seem to get emotional at all? He's a very cool customer when it comes to whether they're up by 20 points or down by 20 points. Like, there just doesn't seem to be any emotion coming out of Jalen Hurts, no matter what position he's in. Now, I can see that as a positive thing, but I can also see it as kind of like, hey, I want to see some emotion out of my leader. How do you feel about that as an Eagles fan?
Well, I guess I feel that it's okay because it's worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could see, like during that Buffalo game, he's just sitting there, just like, resting and waiting for his time to come in. Yeah.
Right.
I do think he does. What you do see a lot of is, after they win and, they always go in the locker room and they show him like giving a, kind of the speech, at the end of the game. And when they show him before the game, he gets animated and he really fires everybody up before the game,
Mm-hmm.
with everyone like a huddle around him. So I think it's there. I think that he just tries to stay calm during the game because I think he doesn't want to exert too much energy on stuff that's not football. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look, I mean, I'll be honest. I do like fiery energy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love that Sirianni's always getting pissed off.
Right. Yeah.
I like that. Like to me, one of my favorite coaches of all time. One of probably one of your favorites of all time is Bill Cowher, and I love Bill
The
Cowher
chin. Right.
because he was just he was intense all the time, right?
Right. Right.
And to be honest, I don't like Tom Brady, but one thing I did like about Tom Brady is I did like the fact that he comes over and chews people out.
Yeah. He
I
wouldn't be
do.
afraid to get in somebody's
Right,
face if they got in
right,
his face. Yeah.
right. I do like that, but I feel like with as well as Jalen's played, I'll just kind of let him play the way he wants to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
curious about that
yeah,
because it was one thing that I've noticed. I've watched a couple Eagles games in a row because they've been playing against some really good teams, and I've noticed that mostly about him. I mean, other than the fact that he's got a great arm,
right,
knows when to run, knows when to pass, just completely talented, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Other than that, that was the one thing that I noticed about him that was different, I think, than the other quarterbacks was his lack of
yeah,
just emotion, really, when it comes down to the highs and the highs and the lows of the lows. Either way, you just
right,
don't see it with him. I thought that
right,
was very interesting. Let's
yeah.
talk about Dallas. What do the Eagles need to do to beat Dallas, Mark? And is this a must-win game for the Eagles?
Well, I don't. Well, here's the first. Let me answer the second one first.
All right.
I don't think it's a must-win game. And the reason why I say that is because if the Cowboys beat the Eagles, then they're both 10-3, and they've both split with each other, right? And nobody else has lost a division game. All right. Um, and his dad thinks it's professional. And
Hey, that's Amy jumping in about Jalen.
good job, Amy.
We
Um,
appreciate
and
it.
and so I don't think it's a must win because if Dallas wins, you're simply tied with Dallas,
Right.
and the Eagles have an easier schedule. Now, I will say, see, the Seattle game isn't a gimme.
Mhm.
Seattle actually really should have beat the Cowboys the other night.
Yeah, the Cowboys really had to come from far behind to win that
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, the Cowboys, well, give them credit, they won the game, but look, Seattle's not a gimme game,
No, it's not.
but it is a game that they should win. But then after that, all you've got is you got two against the Giants and one against the Cardinals, whereas, the Cowboys, they have an at Miami and an at Buffalo.
Right.
And
Yeah.
both of those teams are going to be playing for, either a one seed or to make the playoffs. So um,
Dan seems to think they're going to lose to Dallas in Seattle. It's possible.
it's possible, but I mean, so I think that it's not a must win because I think Dallas will get tripped up. Um, Not that Dallas can't win those games, but
Right.
I would guess out of at Miami and at Buffalo, they'll lose one of them. Um, so I do see another loss on Dallas this season, whereas I think the Eagles could potentially lose and then win out the last four.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think it's a must win. Now, what do they have to do to beat the Cowboys? Um, well, the first thing that will help is Dallas Goedert's expected to play next week.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
So
that's big.
so
That's big for the Eagles.
yeah, so that will help. I think they got to get back to running the ball a little bit. They got to figure out how to defend CeeDee Lamb, because what they did last time against CeeDee Lamb wasn't very good. Although
that's happened to a lot of other teams this year.
Although nobody can cover CeeDee Lamb, it seems.
No.
Look, they got to win the turnover battle. They got to be able to run the ball. Really, when they beat Dallas the last time, the Eagles kind of made some crazy plays where it seemed like they had the game in hand and they let Dallas come back into it, and then Dallas almost pulled it off at the end.
Right.
But I do believe they had something like a 12-point or a 14-point lead, in the fourth quarter, something like that. So, look, I think it's a good opportunity to, look, in some ways, I think losing the 49ers game as badly as they did certainly ignites something, or it should ignite something in everybody to go out there and show that, you're a true Super Bowl contender. I think they're going to come out, and I think they're going to play pretty well against Dallas. I think Dallas is going to play well also because they play very well at home. I think it's going to be one of those games that kind of comes down to who has the ball last. I think it's going to be like, a to the wire type game. What do you think about it?
I always think the best way to beat Dallas is make them beat themselves. They're so good at beating themselves. I mean, just make Dak do something dumb that he always does late enough in the game where they just can't recover from it. You know what I mean? Like maybe the Eagles are up by a touchdown and, Dak is driving, and then he just makes this boneheaded pass on an out to Pollard, and one of your Sly comes up and reads it and he's gone, and it's a pick six. And it's just something that they can't recover from, because Dak just does his things. When he messes up he in a huge explosion. It's not just some small little thing. It's like a big, huge thing. And then everybody's like, oh man, there goes Dak again being Dak. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's always the way to beat Dallas. Make them beat themselves, because it doesn't seem like their running game this year is that great, which I think is beneficial to the Eagles, because I do think that the Eagles can run on Dallas. I mean, you got to worry about number 11 on the other side of the field, but he seems to be more of a pass rusher, somebody who's going to give Jalen Hurts some fits. So I think if you can run the ball, then you kind of keep him in his tracks. He can't just full bore just go right after Jalen Hurts. And I think that's the way you beat Dallas. It's hard to do because they are pretty talented and they are a very fast team. So I mean, you're not going to beat their speed, I don't think. But I think you can take a play, take a page out of the playbook of the 49ers, play a little smash mouth, and just bludgeon them to like a 21-10 lead at halftime or something like that. And then just keep at it that way, and then make Dak try and do too many things that he's not good at doing. I think Dak is a better quarterback when he's under control. When he's got to come from behind and you just start slinging it all the time, that's when he makes his mistakes. And I think that's how anybody can beat Dallas, to be honest with you. But I think the Eagles are singularly better at that, because I think they can get out to a really quick lead. They can score quickly, and I think that might be the key too. Score quickly, and then just go to the run game, and then just slow it down. Put them in some quicksand that way.
Yeah, and that's what they got to do. I mean, look, there was a game earlier in the season where DeAndre Swift had, like 25 carries for 170 yards. Like, you got to give him his touches, even if it's not working for a certain amount of time. I mean, with the Eagles' big offensive line, they should be able to run. Really, I think they should be able to run against anybody. Now, maybe the 49ers is a different story, because once you get past the line, you've got killer linebackers as well.
Right.
But, really, I mean, even though, number 11, what's his name again? I'm drawing a blank.
Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons, right.
Yeah.
Even though Micah Parsons is listed as a linebacker, he's really a defensive end. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way he lines up. So they don't really have much at linebacker. I think that one of their linebackers
Van
is
Esch or
injured.
somebody like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Right?
Van Esch, like he's out. So
Yeah.
so if you can kind of break through the line and get to the second level, you should be able to get some momentum and run the ball pretty well. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you play, a divisional foe on the road, it's something you look at as, yeah, we'll probably lose that game, but you want to show up. You don't want to get blown out. You want to be competitive. You want to be in a situation where you make the other team sweat a little bit.
Right. So, I think I would find it pretty hard to believe after this drubbing this past week, the Eagles would come out and get it handed to them again.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, if that happens, then they've got serious problems.
Well, what's your prediction?
You know?
It's prediction time, Mark. What are you predicting? Eagles, Dallas.
I'm gonna say the Eagles win 34-31
I think
in a
if they're
tight
going to
game.
win, I think they are going to have to score over 30 points.
Mhm.
I'm looking at more of a 28-24 Dallas win.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a blowout by any stretch. I think it'll be back and forth for a little bit during the game.
All right.
All right. So where do you want to go? You want to talk about the Sixers or you want to go right to the Flyers?
Well, I think we can pretty much pass on the Sixers right now. The Sixers had a situation where like their whole team had COVID. They were
Oh
playing
no.
Yeah, they were playing a game without Embiid and Maxey in Boston. And
Yikes.
actually the game was tied with like a minute left somehow. Um somehow. But they ended up losing it. But they're fine. They're 12-7.
Right.
I think they're in fourth place or
Fourth
something like
place. Yeah,
that.
I looked it up. I looked it up today for
Yeah.
you.
I mean, all they really have to do is just get on a little win streak with everybody healthy. But they're a playoff team. We know that. It's just how good are they going to be at the end of the year? Are they going to make a move at the deadline to get another superstar type player in there? Really excited with the development of Maxi so far.
Yeah.
This year, kind of turning into a star. But I think that
I was looking at their roster for kind of the first time,
yeah,
and I noticed a guy called Mo Mamba.
Mo Bamba,
Yeah.
yeah, or Bo Mamba. I don't know, one of the two.
He's
Yeah,
like a 7-foot center,
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
He
yeah.
plays like
Uh-huh.
2 minutes a game or something like that.
But you know
What?
what? In the game against the Celtics, he
Yeah.
he played he played some significant minutes, and I think he had a good game. I think he had like 13 points and hit a three, and
It's so funny to see guys like that on the roster. He's making
Mhm.
actually a pretty penny. He's like making like $4 million or something like that.
Right.
So
Well, that's the thing, man. Like in basketball, I mean, like anybody who's on the team makes $1 million pretty much. You
yeah,
know?
pretty much. Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Maxie's
But
going to get paid this year for sure.
yeah. But let's talk a little Flyers Penguins because we're 20 minutes from the puck drop.
Yeah. This is game 2 of a home-to-home series, Flyers Penguins. What did you watch? Did you watch any of the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I did. I watched the whole game. I watched
Yeah.
the whole game. And you know, I I mean, I, it's hard to really kind of analyze the Flyers because and look, I do like the direction. I like the direction with Keith Jones and Danny Briere taking over the management and
Yeah.
trying to put together a different type of Flyers team than ones that have failed for so many years. I like that. I actually do like the coach because he is so fiery and but at the same time, I do recognize that he is annoying and sometimes he chooses a player like Morgan Frost to
Oh,
like
he hates Frost. You can
he
tell
hates
in his
Frost.
minutes. You can tell
Yeah,
in the minutes that he plays. He plays like
right.
6 or 8 minutes a game, and
Yeah,
that's a guy who needs,
right.
12 to 18 minutes a game to be able to up his talent.
I mean, Morgan Frost last year, I think in the second half of the season was their leading scorer. I mean,
Yeah.
and he's not playing. He's basically not playing him because I guess he feels like he doesn't play defense out there or something like that. But
Well, he's not a tough player. Like you can see
right,
a guy
right.
like Cam Atkinson and
Hmm.
certainly Owen Tippett who are
Hmm.
out there, and not only are they scoring points, but they're also pretty physical in the way they
Right,
approach the game, And I think
right.
that's the kind of guys that Torch leans towards. The one thing I
Yeah,
did notice watching the game on Saturday was systematically he really has them dialed in. Like I have
yeah.
never I have never seen the Penguins shoot and not get any shots on goal. Like literally, they had
Hmm.
like 7 shots on goal through halfway through the game. Like it's
Yeah.
not uncommon for the Penguins to have 7 shots on goal in the first
Hmm.
4 minutes of the game. And so
Yeah,
I did notice that right away
yeah.
with the Flyers that Torts really has them playing a really good system game, which can be boring. And to be honest with
Right,
you, I thought
right.
those first 2 periods were some of the most horrendous hockey I've watched all year. It was so terrible. Like very little shots,
Hmm.
very little action, and
Hmm.
until Ludwig, our new defenseman, and I forget the other guy he ran into. I think it was yeah,
Delorier.
Delorier,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Until they started getting a little fisty there, I was like, okay, maybe something will happen. And then towards the end of the second period, there was a big scrum and everything. And I'm like, finally, at least a little bit of Flyers Penguins
Yeah,
action. Like you
yeah.
expect more of that. And it hasn't been like that in a while since the Flyers have kind of
Mhm.
dialed back their physical nature of the game. And the Penguins do hit a lot, but they're not one to get into a fight, but not hardly ever, when it comes down to playing the game. So,
Yeah,
um,
and I'll tell you what, it's really not it's not something that it wasn't a rarity that happened in the Penguins game. That's pretty much the way they're playing all the time. Like I'm looking at
yeah,
the stats for every game, and I'm just like looking at it, and I always look at the goalies and see like how many saves did they make, and I'll look at like whoever the Flyers are playing, it'll be like, oh, they made 35 saves, and then I'll look at like Urson or Hart, and it'll be like they only made 21 saves. Oh, there were only 23 shots.
right, right.
They do.
Tell
They
me,
they they block a ton of shots.
tell me a little bit more about this Urson. He doesn't strike me as like a big goalie or super fast, but he looks like he's got good skills and he knows positionally where to be in the goal.
Yeah, he is pretty good. He actually last year he came up as a rookie and he tied like the rookie mark of something like winning your first 6 starts, something
Yeah.
like that. So
Okay.
so he's definitely has talent and ability. I mean, so much so, to be honest, I actually think Tortorella likes him more than Hart, and I think that actually might be a reason if Hart ever does get traded,
Yeah.
which could be a mistake or it could not be. I mean, it depends if you're getting like a ransom for him, to rebuild your skill players, then it might be worth it. But
Right.
it wouldn't surprise me if he gets traded, honestly, because I think they really like Urson. And they've
Mhm.
also got some guy in Russia who knows when he's going to come play, but apparently he's, you know, a top-notch prospect. But yeah, Urson's pretty good. I mean, like honestly,
Yeah.
there's not a ton of drop off when it's Urson versus Hart.
And
Um,
I think in today's NHL, I think it really is beneficial for teams to have 2 goalies because
it is,
one,
yeah.
the goalie position is an absolute gold mine. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Carolina and in New Jersey, part of their lack of success is because their goalies have save percentages of like 880 or
Mhm.
890.
Right,
And
right.
it's like if you can have a goalie that's got a 910 save percentage, you're going to
Mhm.
win more games than those other teams, even if they are scoring more goals.
Mhm.
It's really important to have 2 good goalies for that reason, because you don't want to have a goalie go down for even 4 or 5 games, and then you go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak. the NHL is much more streakier than any other sport I've ever seen. And once you start going downhill, it's really hard to get your footing back and to get that back. So I think it makes sense for the Flyers to keep both goalies. I know from a Pittsburgh perspective, having Jari and also having Nedeljkovic on the ice now, to have both of those guys has just been so much better than having, DeSmith last year. And I think it's really kind of solidified that, okay, every other night, even if the guy's not playing, if you got to play him, we're not going to lose that much him coming in the goal. You're not going to have to change the way you scheme the way, and especially the way Torts has got them playing. I think it makes a lot of sense just to keep it the way they are. Hey, another guy I want to talk about is that Tyson Forrester. What do you? I think I really like the way that this kid plays. I think he's not feisty, but he plays with a lot of passion, and he's got a great wrist shot that's just amazing. What do you see from him this year?
Yeah, well, he's one of the guys that I really like. He's a first round pick, and he's a first round pick that was able to make it to the NHL fairly quickly. He didn't spend years in the minors. I think he maybe spent 1 year in the minors. And he came up at the end of last year, and I think in maybe a handful of games, scored a bunch of goals. This year, he made the team to start the year. Didn't really get off to a hot offensive streak, but has been streaking lately. I think he's got like 4 goals in the last 4 games or so.
Yeah.
So he's kind of finding his rhythm offensively, but I look, he's a top prospect. He was a pretty high pick. And I also like Owen Tippett. He was the key piece in the Claude Giroux deal. He was a first round pick that just couldn't break the lineup in Florida because they were so good at the time.
Right.
And last year in his first full season with the Flyers, he put up 27 goals. And he's got good, like as you could see in the game against the Penguins, he's got a good breakaway ability. And he's also
we like
pretty
to call
tough.
That cherry picking. He cherry
picks. Yeah, right. He does. but he also does kind of find the puck around the net quite a bit. He's not afraid to get a little feisty because he's got some size to him, and he's pretty fast. So, I mean, Forster and Tippett are kind of like, if the Flyers are able to get to a point where they're a continual playoff contender, I think those two guys will be a big part of the group that's able to get there.
Yeah, I think they're definitely your guys who are going to be scoring points for you. But I mean, they still have guys like Konechny and Lawton who are sandpaper guys, and they get under your skin. I hate Konechny so much. I hate playing against that guy, and Sanheim's another one of them.
Yeah, and, but you'd love them if they were on your team.
And of course, Hathaway, he's another guy, who's not afraid to just drop the gloves. I'd actually like to see him and Ludwig get into a fight tonight. I think that would be good for the people down in Philadelphia down by the stadium. By the way, my son did get tickets and is heading down.
Very nice
tonight.
Very nice.
I told him to take an extra hat. I'm feeling pretty good about Sid tonight.
Okay. Well, he's been pretty successful against my Flyers. So
usually in Philadelphia when it comes down to it. So
we'll see what happens. And one last final note: the topper, the big guy, Rob Thompson, got a 1-year extension, so he's not a lame duck coach next year. So
no?
Phillies manager.
Whoa, Phillies news! You're breaking news here.
He's there for the last 2 years. Next 2 years.
Well, after that, all you got to do is this. I think we got to play the music.
You can do it, man.
Gonna do it. Let's go. Pause.
All
right. Let's go. I think let's go because it was playing from before.
Thanks for filling in for the technical director. You did a
my pleasure. I got my Drexel shirt on, so represent.
Go Dragons! Took down the Villanova Wildcats.
Sorry about that, Nova people, but every once in a while you got to do it.
It happens.
It's the only time that the Dragons will storm the floor all year long, I'm sure. Well, Mark, it's been great. I enjoyed being in Philadelphia with you.
All right.
How are you going to bring us out of it?
It's time to beat Dallas. Dallas week. Let's take down the girls.
Take them down, boys. And until then, we'll see you on the flippity flip.
Yep.